Hey guys, Scott here, and today I'm going to defend my boy Daddy Myers, because I made a video about who I thought the worst killer in the game was, just, my opinion of it, and so many people in my comments said that they thought that Myers was the worst killer, and I have no idea where that even came from. I don't even think he's in, the bottom 5, and so I thought I would grab, there were 70 comments about this. I just grabbed a couple, and I thought I would read them and argue points against how I think that is not correct. And I think we'll just go from there because let me just be clear. I don't think Myers is a good killer, but we're talking about, the worst killer in the game, and people keep saying Myers is the worst. So I just want to show why I heavily disagree with that. But no, he's obviously nowhere near the best. So get that out of your head if you think I'm saying that he's actually OP or anything like that, because he's not. He's definitely on the weaker side now that he's become sort of outdated. But let's start with just reading some comments. I'm surprised you didn't consider Myers as a contender for being the worst. With add-ons, he's redeemable. However, he has some pretty bad flaws to him. For the record, I played a bunch of Myers games off stream. I used yellow and brown add-ons, so I really think he's that add-on dependent. Maybe the yellow stalking one, which appears 3 on a blood web. So, I mean, you can say he's reliant on that, I guess. Just you can say Demogorgon's reliant on old rat liver or black heart and things like that. But you have infinite of them, so I don't know. I don't find that to be a very big deal. Anyway, he starts off the game as a 4.2 meters a second killer, but has to spend time stalking it out of his state. That's true. Something smart survivors can prevent for a decent amount of time, which gives them what I feel is one of the worst early games in the game. It is true that Myers has a weak early game. That is the only, significantly weak part about Myers, and that I will not disagree with. However, I think it is drastically overestimated how hard it is to get out of Tier 1, because in all of these games, I went into this just trying to find out how long it would take me to get into Tier 2 from Tier 1, from the beginning of stock and from, the beginning of the game. In pretty much every game, the second I started stalking someone, I caught them out of position. They couldn't know it was a Myers. They had no idea I was there. So I get half the, bar right there. And then as they're running away, I just finish it up. It took me probably 5 to 10 seconds every game to get out of Tier 1. It's really not that hard. And I kind of feel like maybe people are just not playing Myers correctly. Now, yeah, if you're on Blood Lodge or something like that, they'll see you coming. But the flip side is if you're on Blood Lodge where they can see you coming, they also have no loops to hide behind. They're all very short loops to where you can just stalk them directly through it. So even then, it's not really an excuse. Probably the only times it's actually hard to get into Tier 2 are clustered indoor maps like Larry's, where in that scenario, you can get this close to them before they know that you're there, despite them being the best survivor in the world. If there's no audio or visual stimulus to indicate that you're nearby, well, they're just not going to know. And instead of hitting that person, you need to stalk them. It's really important that unless you're confident you can get a grab, which would be better, you spend that time stalking them, not hitting them, because you do not want to chase in Tier 1. So I feel like this is something people are maybe doing incorrectly, and that's why they're staying in Tier 1 so long. But you do not want to chase people in Tier 1. You want to get right up in their face and stalk them as much as possible, and you'll get Tier 2 really fast. I don't know why people are having so much trouble getting into Tier 2. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's pretty rare that it takes me more than 10 seconds to get out of Tier 1. So people are saying that it's such a huge detriment, but the fact that you have no Terroritus lets you get right next to survivors to begin to stalk them. So I don't know where that comes from, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just very lucky with stalking people. Next, his stalk takes a long time to tier up, and for unknown reasons, he can't stalk through the same holes as Ghostface. That's not true. They are actually programmed in the exact same way. I'm not sure where that claim comes from, but they are block for block the exact same code. So I don't know where that comes from. But no, it does not take a long time to tier up. It takes 6 seconds if they're, relatively near you. It can take longer, 10 seconds if they're running further away from you. That's if you have no add-ons. So I get that. But typically, if a survivor is just running away from you like that, that's not typically when you want to stalk. The way I usually stalk is I chase normally as a Tier 2 killer without a power. Yes, that's true. As soon as they drop the pallet, now we're in a scenario where I'm not trying to get a hit, I'm stalking them. And they can't really do anything. They can't leave the loop because then I can just hit them and down them. But they can't really stay in the loop either, or I just get to stalk them for free. So those are the scenarios when you actually want to begin your stalk. When they can't really make distance to another loop and they're kind of forced to just stay there or take a hit. That's when it's super easy to get stalked. So maybe that's another thing that people are not doing correctly. They're just trying to stalk people as they're running away or something like that. You shouldn't really try to do that. You want to get close to people first and then do it. He's a lot like Legion in the sense that both of them are only going to land one hit after successful use of their power, except survivors can opt into not healing again against Legion, whereas Myers only has a set amount of time that his power is active. Is countered by people who split up and only gets a few opportunities to use his tier 3. Here's the thing. The whole not healing against Legion thing is not a big deal because you have ample warning that he's coming. That's why against most killers, survivors, that's true, they're not scared of healing. However, if you'll notice the good survivors, what killers do they heal against? Wraith, Pig, Ghostface, and Myers. Because that you can't react to. If a Myers with an 8-meter tear radius whips around a corner, you have less than a second to react to a lunge, to teleport to a pallet, or you just go down. Provided he just, takes not a complete blunt straight line path where, everyone can see him coming. If you do anything resembling some kind of secret pathing, the survivors have absolutely zero time to react to it and you go down. That's why staying injured against stealth killers is way more scary than being injured against a Legion. Because a Legion, you're going to know. As soon as you hear the heartbeat, I know where he is. He's 32 meters away. I can triangulate his position based on the increasing volume of the tear radius, and it's not hard to get away from him. That's why I think Legion is so not a threat, because even if you're kind of nearby teammates, as soon as you see the mending bar appear on the bottom of your screen, you hear the tear radius and you run in the opposite direction. That's it. He's never going to hit you with his power. He's only ever going to hit one guy. That's all people have to do. As soon as you see the mending bar, run in the opposite direction. His frenzy's not going to last that long. It just doesn't. Unless people let them get hit, which is the whole point you're supposed to circumvent. Very easy to avoid that shit. What else in this comment was worth talking about? Using add-ons to play, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Go with the take of Myers being the worst killer in the game. He has the worst early game of any killer in the game, and it is at this point you need pressure as soon as possible, which he cannot get. His tier up is so slow, and if survivors have eyes and block line of sight, Myers can take ages to get his first tier up, which makes him just an M1 killer. Again, people really underestimate the power of having very little tear radius. An 8-meter tear radius, if you have Dead Rabbit, it's a 6-meter tear radius. People really are underestimating how strong that is, even in a chase. Even just in a chase, if you just run to the other side of a loop, you no longer have a tear radius anymore. So you don't even know if the Myers is still chasing you at that point. He probably is, but having that small of a tear radius is not no power. Having a 6-meter tear radius with like Dead Rabbit and Monitor is absolutely a power in itself, and it's a very strong one. It allows you to get so close to survivors that you are basically guaranteed a free hit if there's any line of sight blocking whatsoever. Again, if you're in Blood Lodge or something like that, yes, you're going to have a bad time. Every killer has their bad maps. That's just how the game is. But for the most part, every map has some form of line of sight blocking that allows Myers to get within lunging distance before their survivors can even react. His tier up is so slow. Why do people keep saying it? It takes 6 seconds. It's not that 6 seconds without add-ons, by the way. Now, if they're further away, if you're stalking someone across the map, yes, it'll take longer. But like I said, that's not typically how you should be stalking people. You can't be afraid to get next to people as Myers and then start stalking them. I feel like people are probably taking the role play aspect of Myers a bit too seriously, and they're like trying to stalk from a distance. That's actually the weakest thing you can do with him. What you do is get very close to people like this, and then you start stalking them. That's the best thing you can do, because stalking is the speed is based on the proximity of the survivor. So once you get them to a loop like this, you'll stalk them in 6 seconds. It takes no time at all. So maybe that's something people are doing incorrectly too, thinking Myers is super bad because you're trying to stalk people very far away, in which case the bar will move very slowly. But getting close is very easy and very important. He's good at getting close. That's his whole thing. With no tear radius, you're able to get close very, very easily. You can't capitalize off the weak link either, as your stalk on people are limited. That's true, but that is entirely dependent on you as a killer. I don't fully understand that point. Yeah, don't just stalk one guy for the entire match, and yeah, you're not going to be able to use them anymore. I don't know how to. That's just on you, man. Just stop doing that. All right, what's next? Nobody bringing up my homie Myers, who starts the game off worse than a basic 115 killer. Must do nothing for 5 seconds to be a basic 115 killer, and after doing nothing for another 5 seconds, can sit down for 60 seconds. Good thing Mikey has a tombstone piece, which granted is completely busted. That is true. Tombstone piece is pretty busted. So he starts off worse than a basic 115 killer for 5 seconds. That's true. For 5 seconds, he is worse than a basic 115 killer. Okay. It's 5 seconds. It's not a big deal. And then he must do nothing for 5 seconds after that. The thing is, though, like I've said earlier, that 5 seconds is not at a loss. Whereas another killer, for example, Clown, might spend that 5 seconds throwing bottles on both sides of the pallet or something like that. Myers will spend that time stalking, charging up his power, then he'll kick the pallet. And at that point, he's accomplished what he needs to. He doesn't actually need to down that survivor now. Now he has a 99 tier 2 with basically no terror radius. He can just walk up to whoever he wants on a gen and just instantly down them. That's his strength right there. So you don't have to focus on just downing that first guy in that chase, because that's not really the smartest way to do it. Yeah, you can brute force it with like Bamboozle and Spirit Fury Enduring, and that's actually a pretty fun build, and it works. But really, Myers capitalizes kind of the same way that Wraith does, like with that whole hit and run style. And that is the far more effective way to play him. So that's really what you're supposed to be doing. And after doing nothing, can insta down for 60 seconds. So another thing is, because he has no terror radius, you can't make real strategic positioning of where he is relative to where you are. So say you're just going for a save, and the Myers sees you're going for a hook save, and then he just pops tier 2 on you. You didn't really have a way of knowing that he was coming. If he was even 6 meters away from you behind a wall, you would have no way of knowing he was there unless you had Spine Shield or something like that. So at that point, the person that's going for the save, he gets instantly down. Now there's a guy downed under a guy on the hook, and now you've got 60 seconds of I one-shot you territory to where people are not going to want to come save. So now the guy on the hook is dying. Now you've got the guy on the ground unable to do anything. The other guy might just try to do a generator. But in that scenario, the threat of downing someone at that start of the first tier 1 and then having it for that full duration is massive, because yeah, you might have to play a little scummy to do it, but if someone's on a hook and someone's down on the ground under the hook and you're in tier 3, you win the game. You just won. So in that type of scenario, that's when Myers can be so deadly. The fact that he can activate that tier 3 instantly whenever he wants and keep it for such a long time. That is very, very threatening. Still going to think it was Myers. If you catch him out early, it's an automatic loss if you're any good at all. If you catch him out early, it means you're interacting with him early. It means he's also catching you out early, at which point he stalks you for 6 seconds, and then he's just normal killer again without a terror radius. So, yeah, I don't really get that. Really, the only way that's true is if you're in a 4-man survive with friends, someone sees Myers across the map and tells everyone to hide in a locker or something like that, then sure. But you have to go to such like fantasy settings like to make these arguments make sense, that I don't think it's fair. Surprised no Myers, starts as 105, is completely add-on dependent. Again, I played most of these games with Yellow and Rod add-ons, had no trouble whatsoever. He's probably the weakest and hardest to get insta-down power. Hardest to get insta-down power? You just look at people and hold the button down. You don't do anything. It's the easiest power to get in the game. It actually doesn't require anything. It requires you to look at people. Maybe he's saying difficulty in acquiring, not the actual skill involved to it. Let's tackle it as if he's saying that, because I think that one makes more sense, because just looking at people is easy. I still don't understand that. Looking people, like you've been seeing it in this video, just looking at people is not that hard. You can have people in scenarios where they have no line of sight, whether it's a low loop like on McMillan or Autohaven or on Colbin and Cowtree. Lots of maps have very short loops where they can't even not get stalked in the loop. And then there's certain things like jungle gyms and things like that, which you should probably just run normally, kick the pallet, and then as they're running to something else, then you can stalk them. You don't want to try to, get stalking when there's like 50 line of sight blockers in a row. That's just not an efficient way of playing him. Against a good team, they can keep you in tier 1 all of the early game. See, this I don't really disagree, or I don't agree with either, because even the best team in the world doesn't know that you're Myers at the beginning of the match. So they're not going to go into the match just thinking, okay, it's a Myers. We need to creep along the edges of the map. We need to be very stealthy and be very careful. People don't do that. In fact, good survivors are cocky, run around, leave scratches. They don't give a shit. They're having fun. In that scenario, you catch people just running out in the open, just, looting a chest. Like, they don't actually care in that scenario. So I find those players even easier to stalk than people that just spend the entire time just sort of hiding. So unless you're on like Larry's or, the game or Hawkins or something like that, which again, you're going to have a shitty time just forever because fuck those maps. Getting out of tier 1, I just never have a problem with. I don't know what people are doing. I feel like I'm being like super egotistical. Like I'm so high above you guys. I get out of tier 1 so fast, but I genuinely don't ever have problems getting out of tier 1 within 10, 15 seconds. So I don't know what I'm doing right or you guys are doing wrong, but I don't ever have an entire early game where I'm stuck in tier 1. It does rarely happen on those maps that I talked about, and that sucks. But for the most part, it's just not happening. I just don't get that. He has no anti-loop or consistent way to injure. and is the definition of an M1 killer. His consistent way of injuring is you cannot react to him being right next to you attacking you. That's his consistent way of injuring. Or it's like Wraith. Wraith has a consistent way of injuring you. It's the same thing. As long as you play Myers correctly and you don't just walk in open fields all the time, you can get free hits on people extremely easy. And if you have a 99 tier 2, you can get free downs on anybody easily. That's what makes him so strong. So he has no anti-loop. I don't think that's true. His anti-loop is I down you before you even realize that you're being attacked. That's his anti-loop, and it's strong when it works. And it can be used on basically any tile like this in the game. If you're working on a generator in this little jungle gym here, in this little tile setup, you won't be able to see him coming because you're in that little alcove. As long as he comes from behind the wall and not from this side right over here, he's just going to get a hit on you. And there's nothing you can really do about it unless you have Spine Chill again. I'm surprised Myers is not in discussion. His power is also god-awful. The argument is always that he can Snowball, but doesn't it require huge misplays on the Survivor side? No, it doesn't really, because the Survivor has nothing to react to. If a Myers with a 6-meter tear radius walks up to a guy behind a wall and smacks him, there's no Survivor misplay there. You have to do that generator at some point. It's not a Survivor making a mistake. You can't react to the Myers downing you there. And even if you heal to avoid the tier 2 sneak up, if he's got a 99 tier 3, you still can't react to that and then you instantly go down. That has nothing to do with having a good play or anything like that. Sometimes you have to do gens that are covered by walls, in which case the Myers is just going to get a free hit on you every single time, no matter how careful you are, unless you have Spine Chill again or something like that. Or Object, or some perk that reveals them through walls. If you have some gimmick perk, then whatever, it kind of invalidates the argument, but I think that's completely unfair because you could apply that to every killer in the game. So, no, I completely disagree that it requires a misplay on the Survivor. It just simply requires the Survivor doing a generator, doing their objective with a wall nearby. That's basically it. It's not a misplay. Couldn't Legion do the same thing since Survivors are basically always one-shot all the time? No, because again, Legion has no stealth mechanic whatsoever. As soon as you hear a tear radius, the Survivor has 10 seconds to get to any safe place that they want. That is a huge amount of time to get to wherever the hell they want. They're going to get to a pallet or a window. With Myers, he just downs you before you can even think about what's happening. So, no, I disagree with that for sure. How do you not consider Myers? He has to work early game just to become a basic killer. Again, it's aware Survivors in most maps. It can take a long time to get at tier 1. The thing is, though, you keep saying aware Survivors. Survivors are not aware that they're going against the Myers until they see the Myers, at which point that means the Myers is already stalking them. So I still don't understand that argument, because if you become aware of each other, it's because you see each other, which means that he can stalk you already. So I don't really understand why people keep going with that argument, because it's a two-way street. You have to be aware of each other. I guess if the Myers is like moonwalking across the map and you're on the other side of the map and you see him, sure. But for the most part, the scenarios you get are people are just running into you because they have no way of knowing that you're a Myers. And that is one of the strongest things that get him out of tier 1 very quickly. Sure, he has an ins and down, but like you said, good Survivors are comfortable being injured. Again, not against stealth killers. Good Survivors are not comfortable against stealth killers being injured. People keep making that argument as if it's a universal truth. It is not. Being injured against stealth killers is very dangerous and will be one of the few times you'll see good Survivors actually go for a heal. Because, the worst Wraith in the world can just down the best Survivor in the world if they have no time to react to it. Being injured against stealth killers is the worst thing that you can do. So that part I disagree with. All he really has is a slightly longer lunge, faster vaults, and a larger tear radius. The faster vaults, low-key, are extremely useful. People sleep on the faster vault a lot. It allows you to tackle tiles in a completely different way. For example, the shack, you can bait going out the door, moonwalk towards the window, and then vault it, and you will actually be able to hit them before they can get back around to the window or the pallet. Only Myers can do that. So people, I think, sleep on the power of the additional vault speed as well. You throw Bamboozle on that shit too, you can outplay like every tile in the game. It's pretty nuts. I'm not a huge fan of Bamboozle, but I do like it on Myers. It's pretty damn fun. So that's a lot right there. If the Survivor's decent at looping, they can waste most of his time as well. The thing is, though, you shouldn't be wasting most of his time, because if he's playing it correctly, he's 99ing you and hitting you immediately. He's hitting you within 1 second of his 99 or of his tier 3. That's the correct way to play Myers. That's why I keep saying Myers is not really that fun to go against, because in that scenario, you basically have someone appear and just down you, and you don't have anything to do about it, because that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's the correct, efficient way to play him. So in that scenario, it doesn't matter. You can't waste all of his time because if he's playing correctly, he's downing you before you can react to it. Now, getting secondary kills off of that initial down is definitely more of an argument for sure. But that's where things like, that's where perks come into play. Spirit Fury, Enduring, Bamboozle, simply vaulting faster by default, things like that. The fact that you will not know where he is when he starts, so it'll give you very little reaction time. If he's got an Infectious Fright and down someone next to you, you don't have time to even react to start getting away. You just have to start booking it immediately. He might be able to get you within that 60 seconds. Now he's got 2 people down. There are a lot of scenarios where Myers can snowball pretty well. Granted, if people spread out and play efficiently, that's not going to happen with any killer, so that's not really an argument against Myers. That's just something that happens against every killer in the game if everyone spreads out, including Legion 2. What's worse is the fact if he can't get to tier 3 off of one survivor. What's even worse is the fact he can't even get to tier 3 off of one survivor. Meaning he can legit be powerless against some people if you find the wrong. That's not true. You can get tier 3 off one survivor. Granted, it's a bad idea because then you basically used all of them up entirely, so I wouldn't do that, but you can, so that's not correct. Myers without broken add-ons is one of the weakest. Terrible early game and weak power. Only has early game with normal speed and gets insane mobility and one-shots with his power. Oni doesn't have early game. What? Oni has 0 Oni. My God. This has been a long video, I'm sorry. Oni has 0 early game at all. You just have to walk up to people and hit him. In fact, it's easier for Myers to get a hit on people because he has no tear radius. So I don't understand that argument at all. Granted, Oni's power is definitely stronger than Myers' power. That's why we're not arguing that Myers is better than Oni, because he's definitely not. We're just saying Myers is not the worst killer. But that is a weird argument because Oni's early game is equally terrible. I want to bring up Myers is the worst killer. Realistically, what does his power actually do to help him in a chase? End the chase before it begins. That's what it does. That's all right to answer that. Surprised you didn't mention Myers, because in my opinion, Myers is the worst killer currently. Starts off slow and literally gets countered by breaking LOS plus good looping. Half the killers in the game get countered by LOS from Nurse and Huntress and Deathslinger, and I don't know, half the killers in the game get countered by that, so all right. And good looping. Again, the whole thing is you're supposed to down people before they start looping you. That's the correct way to play him. His tier 3 is really weak compared to what he had to do to get it. You have to look at people for 6 seconds. You don't have to do anything. You just look at people. It's pretty easy. I will agree, though, that he's an outdated killer that needs more love. The thing is, like, Myers was never bad. The thing is, though, they kept releasing good killers, so he kept falling down and down and down to where he's now on the lower end, not because he got worse, but because everything else around him got better. So I do agree that he's a bit outdated and could probably use a bit of a buff, but the whole point of all this was saying that he's not the worst killer, so I thought I would just answer these comments. Let's do like a couple more. There's a lot of these, and I still don't understand them, but I would honestly say Myers is among the worst killers in the game, having to stalk for a fair amount of time just to be a 115 killer with no power. Again, the power is having no tear radius. That is a giant power. That's huge. Why do people say Ghostface is fine? That's his power to have no tear radius too. I don't get it. And his Snowball is meh compared to Oni, Billy, Huntress. But yeah, okay. I agree. That's why he's not near the best killers in the game. But the argument in the video was that he's not the worst killer in the game, which everyone keeps saying he's the worst. Yeah, no shit, he doesn't compare to Oni or Huntress or Billy or Blight. No one's pretending that he does. But saying that he's the worst because he doesn't compare to that is unfair. I agree that Legion's the worst killer in the game. What about Myers? He's also debated as one of, if not the worst killers. I think Myers is one of the worst killers in the game because of the time it takes to set up. The fact that he's just a slightly better Legion. I don't even understand the beginnings of that comparison. How is he slightly better Legion? Because people are usually like within one hit, or that's not a good comparison. Don't agree with your reasoning at all. Legion can injure all survivors pretty easily, plus he is fast in his frenzy. He's not that fast in his frenzy. He moves like 0.6 meters faster, which counts towards his map pressure. Nah, it doesn't. And the delay that gives him to survivors having to mend gives him a bit of stall. That's true. I think Myers is the worst killer in the game. Takes forever to get a tier 1. Takes 6 seconds. And even when he gets out of tier 1, he becomes an M1 killer with no tear radius that can instantly down people. Tier 3 isn't that strong. It's like having Haunted Grounds on any M1 killer without a tear radius. Some of his add-ons are nuts, but his base killer is pretty shit. So it seems like the main thing that people are not understanding is the correct way to play Myers. You 99 his tier 2. It's sort of like Oni, where it's almost more important not to down the person that you're chasing, but to farm blood off of them, or in this case, to farm stock off of them. And then you have an instant unreactable down on basically anyone that's out of your line of sight, and that's the strength of Myers. And that is where you would succeed with him. So if you're not playing Myers like that, then yes, I can understand if you're just walking up to people in tier 3 and they lead you on a 40-second chase and you get one down. Yeah, that sounds shit. But if you got Infectious Fright, you sneak up to someone with a 99 tier 2, you instantly down that guy, you Infectious Fright to another guy within 60 seconds, which you're going to be able to do, and you get 2 downs out of your power, the whole game is shifted. So I think this is just really people are not playing Myers correctly or something like that, because I have never had these issues playing him. Now, again, he's not a great killer. I'm not saying he is, but he's the worst? No, there's no fucking way Myers is the worst killer. Oh, that's it, guys. This is way too long. See ya.